Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I am bringing you a game from the Athena Games City Championships in Norwich in the UK. Now, this is happening in the standard format, so we are going from the X and Y set all the way through till breakthrough. Breakpoint is not legal yet, but you can rest assured that when it is, tournament games on this channel will be very, very quickly coming along. Don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. Now, we are in 15 minutes, we are in best of 3, and I should say thank you very much to the lovely people at Athena Games in Norwich, definitely one of my favourite places in the UK to play. So sit back, grab yourself a nice beverage, and enjoy this game from the Norwich City Championships. Best of 3, 50 minutes, X and Y to breakthrough. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so here we have the top 4 of the Norwich City Championships, and we have a brother-on-brother battle. On the left, we have Mr. Kirkham Luke style, and on the right, we have Mr. Kirkham Corey style. Corey is playing Manectric bats. You can see straight away there, some moderately painful Sycamore, dropping an AZ, and a second Sycamore, an Energy, and a Crobat. But turn 1 Sycamore, not the end of the world. He's got 2 Zubats down. He gets a Manectric. He gets an Energy on the Manectric. He gets a 3rd Zubat down. And a level ball, one would presume for a 4th Zubat here. Yes, he does go for the 4th Zubat. Luke is going to be playing Mewtwo. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, Luke's going to have a bit of an advantage here. Mewtwo, I think, is a little bit stronger. We'll talk about the matchup as we go on, as we always do. We got to look at setups first, of course, though. And Corey is obviously a town map there. That's going to let Corey look at all of his prizes and see what's prized, which is going to help as he goes through the game. Because every time he takes a prize, he can choose which one he takes. He would have loved a head ringer there. Getting a head ringer on that Mewtwo would have been fantastic. Luke is going to be wanting to get a Spirit Link on that Mewtwo so that he can go ahead and Mega Evolve next turn. He does, however, have 2 Mewtwo EXs, and he gets an Energy on one, and he starts playing a Battle Compressor. You see he gets rid of an Energy there because he can use Mega Turbo to attach those energies to Mewtwo after they have Mega Evolved. He also gets rid of a Hex Maniac and a Lysander, which they're going in the discard now so that he can reuse them with VS Seeker later. Hex Maniac, of course, is going to be very important here. It stops both people using abilities, and turning off the abilities of the Zubat and Crobat are going to be huge in this matchup for Luke. So he gets a Shaman down, gets to draw a bunch of cards. He's got the Mega, and he's got a Spirit Link as well. And he's got some Sycamore. He has drawn 3 Sycamore, which is a bit of a pain. Oh, he's choosing to play the Sycamore. That's interesting. There was an argument there that he should hold on to the Sycamore so that he has the Mega ready for next turn, so that he has the Sycamore. But we see there, he's got a Mega Turbo, he's got 2 in the discard, and actually he can take another Mega Turbo there if he so wishes, or he can use a VS Seeker to get one of his Sycamore back. That's essentially his 2 choices. Now, he doesn't have the Mega, but he does have a Hooper. So maybe he goes VS Seeker so he can Hex Maniac next turn. That looks like what he's going to be doing. So he had 2 choices there. He could have gone for the Mega Turbo, allowing him to get set up, get energy on the field, but instead he's gone for a VS Seeker, and one would assume he's going to be using that so that he can Hex Maniac next turn. Of course, the fact that he's used a Sycamore means that Corey is going to be able to drop Golbats next turn, start getting some damage on the field. Oh, we see a second Lightning there, and we see a Parallel City coming down. That means that Luke is not going to be able to use that Hooper or that Shaman he's got in hand, because the way he's put it down, that limits Luke to only having 3 bench Pokemon. And there we see a level ball for the first Golbat, dropping 20 damage. Now, Corey is going to want to be largely using bats here. They hit for weakness on the Mewtwo. Now, Luke is using the damage change Mewtwo EX. What that means is that for 2 Psychic and a Colorless, you get to swap the damage on each Pokemon. i.e., if Corey goes and does 180 damage, Luke can just use damage change to take the 180 damage off of the Mewtwo and put it onto whatever's active for Corey. So Corey's going to have to play around that. He's going to have to do little enough damage that Luke can't damage change. So, and there goes a second Golbat. So if Luke goes and puts a Manectric active here, he is not going to want to do he's not going to want to do... Well, actually, it's not going to be an issue here with the Mewtwo, because if he does 170, he gets the KO. But if he does less than 170 here, then next turn, Luke could potentially get rid of all of that damage. Now, Luke does play... Oh, we see 2 Golbats coming down here. And Corey's going to be trying to set up a KO. Now, Mewtwo's got a... Oh, okay. Now, does he have a Lysander here? And a Muscle Band. If he does, he's actually got the KO on that Mewtwo EX. Assault Laser would do 120, which wouldn't be the KO. Now, he's already put 20 on the active Mewtwo, so if he's got a Lysander here, he might have thrown away the KO. Luke, for his part, is going to be wanting to use Shrine of Memories. That's the stadium that allows you to use the attacks of your pre-evolutions, so that if Corey doesn't get a one-hit KO, Luke can use damage change and completely heal Mewtwo while maybe taking KOs. And unfortunately, now Corey could have had a KO there. Corey could have put all 3 bat damage on the active Mewtwo and then used Assault Laser for 120 to get the KO. However, he would have either needed a Lysander to bring up the benched Mewtwo that has a tool attached, or a Head Ringer to attach to the active Mewtwo, because remember that Assault Laser does 60 if they don't have a tool attached, and 120 if they do, and there goes the Shrine of Memories, and there goes the Hooper. So Corey there in an awkward position. As you can see, he's got both a Head Ringer and a Lysander in his prizes. Annoying that he couldn't get either of them back, but that's the way it goes. He had everything he needed to take the KO, except he couldn't have access to a Mewtwo with a tool attached. So a shame there, but what can you do? Now Luke, for his turn, he does go ahead and get the Hooper. And he does go ahead and get a Mega Mewtwo so that he can go ahead and do some evolving fun time. And he gets another Mewtwo to pop down on the bench there. Now, he does have a Mega in hand, but he doesn't appear to have a Spirit Link. So the question is, where's he going to go? Now, he's got the Mega Turbo. We know he had, if I remember correctly, 2 in the discard. And he's already attached to the active. And it looks like he's just going to shame in there for a couple. Now, Corey, for what he needs to do is start taking prizes. Getting rid of the Megas is going to be difficult because Manectric essentially taps out at 140. So that means he is going to be 70 damage short of KOing a Mewtwo. And remember what it looks like he might be looking to use an AZ this turn to get rid of the Mewtwo from the active. Now, what that means is that Corey's going to need to do an extra 70 damage from bats, and if he doesn't do so, Luke can just use damage change to completely heal the Mewtwo. So with the Mega Mewtwo there, it's got a HP of 210. If Corey does between 170 and 210, Luke can actually damage change for the KO. Even if he doesn't, Luke can damage change, and even if Luke doesn't get a KO from damage changing, it's really not the end of the world, because Corey is really going to struggle to one-hit KO a Mega Mewtwo. So that gives Luke a bit of an advantage in this game. The fact that Corey's going to struggle to one-hit KO. So what Corey is going to want to do is poke away at the Mewtwo, do a little bit of damage, not a huge amount, just a little bit of damage, to set him up for the KO. So maybe he does 70, 80 damage, and then sets the Mewtwo up for a big KO later. Because even if Corey does, say, 130 damage, Luke could use a Lysander to bring up a Crobat and get the KO on the Crobat. Now, most of these Manectric Bats decks tend to play for Muscle Band. So what Corey could do is Muscle Band a Crobat. That would then allow him to do 100 damage to a Mewtwo, a Mega Mewtwo, or either of them in fact, because of the weakness. And then if Luke were to use Damage Change, it would then switch 100 damage onto the Crobat, Crobat having 100 HP. Excuse me, 130 HP, which would leave him with 30 HP after the damage change. So Luke then would either damage change but not get a KO, or he could use something like Mega Mewtwo Psychic Infinity. Oh, and we see a Hex Maniac coming down from Corey here, interestingly enough. And then he's just going to use Zubat's attack to do 20 damage. 10 to any Pokemon plus the 10 for weakness. So Luke then could use something like Psychic Infinity on the Mega Mewtwo to take a KO on the Crobat. But if Luke does that, he leaves 100 damage on the Mega Mewtwo, leaving him well within range for a Manectric. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, at the end of Luke's last turn, he did just evolve to Mega Mewtwo and end his turn by doing so. Didn't have the Spirit Link, but he didn't really need to. Now, Luke here, he's got the KO with Psychic Infinity. He's actually doing 100 damage. Psychic Infinity does... No, not sorry, it's 130. It's 30 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon, plus 10 base damage. So 3 energy on the Mewtwo, 1 on the Zubat, that's 4 in total, 120 plus the 10 equals 130. So easily got the KO. Now, Mewtwo here has got 170 HP. But Luke used Hex Maniac last turn. We can see it at the top of his deck. And that's huge here. Because even with a Muscle Band, Manectric can do 140, leaving Mewtwo on 180. Now, in a lot of decks, against a lot of decks, you could go, well, I'll just do 180. Next turn, I'll drop a Crobat and get the KO. But Corey can't do that in this game. Because if Corey does 180, or puts Mewtwo up to 180 with Manectric, then Mewtwo can just use Damage Change. Manectric has 170 HP, and Manectric will actually be KO'd, and Mewtwo will be completely devoid of damage. And that's the problem with this Mewtwo deck. Now, we see Parallel City coming down again, and again it's, coming down in that way that limits Luke to 3 bench Pokemon. Although it does get rid of a Mewtwo and a Hooper. Now, there was an argument here that Corey should just ignore the Mega Mewtwo's. And it's a bit of a pain, but like I've explained, and we see a Xerosic coming down here to get rid of the DCE on the Mewtwo. Now, I've explained in this game... now here, there is no Spirit Link on the Mewtwo, so Manectric is only going to be hitting for 60, which means the Mewtwo will go up to 100 and Damage Change won't KO the Manectric. Although Luke could Lysander a Golbat off the bench and kill it. Now I think... Oh, and there's another Shrine of Memories. So, because without the Shrine of Memories, Luke can't use Damage Change. Now I think there is an argument here for Corey, and I don't think both Lysander in the discard, but I could be wrong. There is an argument here for Corey to just ignore the Mega Mewtwo's. You're not getting the one-hit KO. Damage Change is a pain. In this game, if I were Corey, I would have been tempted to just not play my Parallel Cities. Luke had 2 Pikachu, 170 HP Mewtwo, and 170 HP Hooper on the bench. And we see a VS Seeker for a Sycamore there from Luke. So I think there was a real argument there for Corey to just go, you know what? Screw your Mega Mewtwo. I'm just going to let you use Psychic Infinity to KO all of my stuff. Because I know that I can KO your Shaymins on the bench. I can KO your Hoopers on the bench. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and try and kill your Shaymins with Lysander. And maybe even just put all of my bat damage onto your Mewtwo. Try and get maybe, 3 Crobats in a turn and then skill dive the Shaman. Now, that's not an easy way to win, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying Corey can just casually Lysander stuff off the bench and kill it. And, of course, as with every solely Lysander plan, If you're just killing stuff off your opponent's bench, you're leaving their attacker be, and their attacker is just going to take prizes turn after turn after turn. So it's not a great plan, but we see here, Luke just killed the Manectric. So, and with Psychic Infinity. He got, 4 energy on, add the 2 onto Manectric, is 190 in total. So, here's the problem for Corey. He's not one-hit KOing. If he comes close, Luke can damage change. If he doesn't come close, Luke can just do really big Psychic Infinity. Now, we see here, Corey has a possibility of a KO. That Mewtwo is down to 110 HP. So, and there's a Muscle Band on the Golbat. If Corey has a Crobat here, he can bite the Mewtwo for 30, then use Skill Die for 100, and that will get the KO. Luke will still be up 2 prizes, and then can use Psychic Infinity to kill the Golbat, and then to kill a Manectric. However, maybe there's a way back into this for Corey. Maybe Corey gets the KO. Oh, has he not got a Crobat? A Crobat would be huge this turn. Because that Mega Mewtwo on the bench has got 40 damage on it. Which means next turn, Corey needs to do 170. Which is a muscle-banded Manectric with 2 energy for 140. And a Crobat. So if Corey has a Crobat this turn, he can knock out the active Mega Mewtwo. And then if he gets a Crobat next turn, he can knock out that other Mega Mewtwo, start really putting some pressure onto Luke. And then he could just KO the Shaman for game. But it doesn't, I mean, if you would think if he had the Crobat, he'd have played it by now. And, I mean, it looks like this is the turn for Corey. It looks like this is the turn. If he's got a Crobat now, he bites the active Mewtwo, put it up to 130, attacks with the muscle-banded Golbat, and he hasn't got it. He's just using Swoop across for 40 to the active. Which is okay, because that puts Mewtwo on 160, which won't damage change KO the Manectric. Although, the problem is here, Corey's just lost the prize race. Now, Luke is going to just damage change to KO the Golbat while completely healing the Mewtwo. I mean, I'd be stunned if he didn't. So he'll then have a completely healed Mewtwo and 2 prizes to go. And then he can just... And in fact, not only will he have 2 prizes to go, but he'll have a 4 energy Mewtwo that he can use to just casually KO that Manectric and win the game next turn. Corey needed an EX KO last turn. Because what would have happened was that Corey would have got a KO on the active Mega Mewtwo, leaving Luke with 1 with 2 energy. Luke then comes up and gets a KO, goes down to 2 prizes. Corey can then KO the Mega Mewtwo that would then have a couple of energy. By which stage, Corey's down to 2 prizes, Luke's down to 2 prizes, and although it's Luke's turn, Luke probably doesn't have a Mega Mewtwo ready to go. As it is, there's no way Corey wins this game now. He needed a Crobat last turn and this turn. He didn't get it, and the game is over. There's no coming back here. Even if Corey pulls off some miracle huge KO on that active Mega Mewtwo, which I don't believe is possible. I can't quite see his bench. I believe he's just got the 2 Golbats down. Even a double Crobat drop and a muscle-banded Manectric attack here would only do 200. Even now he needs an energy and a double Crobat just to get the KO. And all Luke needs to do here is get this one out the active, and he's got the KO on the Manectric. So Corey had that one turn. That one turn where he could go ahead and take the Mega Mewtwo KO, try and get the one the following turn. And this is what I find, and you can see earlier in this tournament, you can see my Raichu Bats taking on Scott Simmons' Mega Mewtwo deck. Oh, and there we see VS Seeker for an AZ, and that is the game. Game 1 to Big Kirkham. Sorry, Little Kirkham. I feel like it'd be mean to call them Big Kirkham and Little Kirkham for the next game, but there's a part of me that really wants to spend the whole rest of this video referring to them as Big Kirkham and Little Kirkham. Oh, and you see there, yeah, you can see Corey pointing to the cards. Corey was thinking the same thing that we were, ladies and gentlemen. He knew that the Crobats, and I genuinely believe, and we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Luke hits a couple of Mega Turbos and gets a third Mega Mewtwo, in which case he wins the game anyway. But I really get the feeling that had Corey got the KO that turn and the KO the following turn, that Luke would not have had a third Mega Mewtwo able to KO the Manectric, and Corey would have been able to win the game by Lysandering the Shaman. And we know he would have had the Lysander because he would have taken it out of his prizes. But hey-ho. By the way, if you're wondering about the head ringer on the Mega Mewtwo, the attack cost is Psychic, Colourless. So 2 Psychic and a double Colourless will allow damage change even when you've got a head ringer on it. Because essentially the cost becomes Psychic, double Colourless. So, going back to the game I was talking about, the one with me and Scott, and I've put the links to, I believe it was round 2, I've put the links to all of the games from this tournament, because there's been a little bit of a break. Essentially, Luke wanted to play this deck at the ECC. He asked me not to post the videos with his listing until after the tournament, which was a fair request. It was only a week or so before the tournament that we ran these games. I think it was 2 weeks. So it has been a couple of weeks since I posted the first few games from this tournament. Links to all of them, if you haven't seen them, are in the description of this video. And if you go back to the game I played against Scott, a lot of what I was saying in this video is what I'm going to say about Corey here. You just need everything at the right time to beat these Mega Mewtwo decks. Because they've got that damage change ability, it's no good, you know. And Manectric Bats is one of those decks. It spreads damage around using Golbat, using Crobat, using Manectric's Overrun to do 20 to the active and 20 to one of the bench. Or 40 to the active if you've got a muscle band. It is one of these decks where you're really trying to spread the damage around. You're setting up KOs. You can't do that against these Mega Mewtwo decks. Or at least not as easily as you can against a lot of decks. It really does put you in an uncomfortable position. Like, indeed, the back of a Volvo. If you get that reference, we can be friends. If you get the reference, stick it down in the comments. There's no prize, but the first one to get it, the first one to post in the comments where that reference comes from, wins my love. So Corey's going first here. And he starts with a Zubat. He plays a Trainer's Mail. That allows him to look at the top 4 cards of his deck and take any non-Trainer's Mail trainer he finds. Any trainer, stadium, supporter, whatever. He finds a level ball and he plays that to get a second Zubat. And we see an Ultra Ball coming down here for presumably a Manectric. Yes, there we go. Now, there is an argument here, and I don't know what Corey's got in his hand. There's an argument for the judge. Now, don't get me wrong. Corey probably wants to play a more aggressive supporter. Something like a Sycamore that he can use. I mean, we saw, oh, and there's another town map turn 1. That's pretty tasty. It's going to let him put all of his prizes face up. And a Sycamore for 7. And you see Luke's reaction to that. Now, what Corey wants, and they should have high-fived because that was an empty hand Sycamore. What Corey really wants here is what he did in the first. And he had a very good setup game 1. He wants the Muscle Band and Manectric with 1 energy. He wants 4 Zubats on the bench. And he's already got 3. And the Manectric and the energy and the Muscle Band. But one of the things when you're going first in this game, a turn 1 judge is brutal. A judge is a supporter that forces both players to shuffle their hand into their deck. Oh, we see an Ultra Ball coming down, getting rid of, is that a Golbat and a Crobat? 2 Golbats? Oh, he's got the 4th Zubat, but he's going to need to play something like a Super Rod or Sacred Ash this game to shuffle some of those bats back in, because now he's got 4 Zubats, but he can only have 3 Golbats in his deck as a maximum now, because he's just discarded 1. Oh, and as we say that, he immediately plays a Super Rod to get it was a Golbat and a Crobat straight back into his deck. So in that, yeah, absolutely good use of the Ultra Ball. So, you know, when you can get, for instance, you know, you get 2 Zubats down, you get, and this, you can see Luke's reaction there. This is a good turn 1 from Corey. He is getting the nuts, proverbially speaking. He's got the Sycamore. He's got the Shaman. This is good, ladies and gentlemen. This is very, very good indeed. However, and I'm not saying Corey made a mistake. I'm clearly pointing out an alternate course of action he could take. But he already had 2 Zubat, a Manectric, and an Energy. He had a setup. So one thing you can do is play a judge, put your opponent down to a 4-card starting hand, and then basically go, what you got, mate? What you got? Bring it on. However, one of the risks with judge is that maybe you have nothing. I mean, I got turn 1 judged a few times at the ECC. That was a big European tournament that happened shortly after this. One game where somebody played a judge turn 1, I drew absolutely nothing and lost the game. Never drew a supporter, shaman, ultra ball, or anything with which I could draw cards. Luke there just playing a battle compressor to get rid of Hex Maniac, which we've already said how important it is. Sycamore, because he's going to want a VS Seeker for it later, because Sycamore's amazing. So you always want one in your discard early game so you can draw Sycamore or VS Seeker to use it. And 1 energy so that he can use Mega Turbo later. Actually, the one thing Corey did miss on his opening turn was a head ringer for that Mewtwo. That would have been really big. Because it not only does it increase the attack cost of 1, but it also guarantees that your opponent can't get a Spirit Link on there unless they play something like a Zerosic to get rid of the Spirit Link on the head ringer on their own Pokemon. So it slows them down by an energy attachment, and it means they have to end their turn when they Mega Evolve, which of course the tool Spirit Link stops you having to do. But another time when I got turn 1 judged, I drew 2 Sycamore. And I drew much better than my opponent. So judge really can be a double-edged sword. However, if you've got a decent setup, sometimes it's worth a judge. So Luke there went ahead and got a very nice turn 1 play. The turn 1 play these Mewtwo decks always want. Ultra Ball for a Hooper, Hooper for a Mewtwo, and a Shaman. And did he get a Mega as well? No, there's no Mega in his hand. I believe he just went for a Mewtwo and a Shaman there. Of course, one of the reasons you don't go for a Mega in that situation is that Shaman's setup ability allows you to draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. So if you go and search for a Mega with Hooper, you can't Mega Evolve on the first turn of the game, because your Pokemon have to be down for a turn before you do that. Luke there just using a VS Seeker to grab back that Hex that he got rid of using Battle Compressor, and then playing it to stop any Golbats coming down, or at least if they do come down, stop them from doing any damage. So you wouldn't play the Mega Mewtwo into your hand, because if you grab the Mega Mewtwo from your hand using the Hooper, then that means that that's 1 less card that you're going to go ahead and draw with Shaman. It is, quite frankly, not ideal. Hey ho, these things happen. So we do get a Golbat down, and Corey had to put that Golbat down. I don't think that's real, ladies and gentlemen. He had to put the Golbat down because, of course, Golbat has free retreat and Zubat does not. There was the old, before it rotated, there was a 40 HP Zubat that had free retreat when it had no energy attached to it. Although, having said that, that was an ability. So even if Corey was playing that one, don't forget that Luke judged last turn. I didn't judge, sorry. Corey's judging right now. He used a VS Seeker to use that judge. Remember, he Sycamored the Ultra Balled the judge earlier. So what he's trying to do here is, again, he's trying to slow down. He's got a better setup than Luke, so he's trying to slow Luke down. Not a bad idea at all, actually. Because now Luke's got 1 less Hooper in his deck, 1 less Shaman in his deck. Oh, and he draws an Ace Trainer. Oh, he hasn't drawn much. And he can't use the Ace Trainer until he's behind on prizes. So that's not bad. So yeah, Corey's doing quite nicely here. He's rocking along really quite nicely. He also played a Parallel City, which is limiting Luke's bench to 3 before the judge. So this is really and that was a nice turn from Corey there. Delayed the judge by a turn, but it still hopefully is doing what he wanted. Now he does get 2 Megas and a Spirit Link, but now he has nothing to draw cards. And even if he had an Ultra Ball or a Shaman, there's nothing he could do. So he uses Lysander to bring that Shaman into the active, and he's now got to wait until either he draws into something Or Corey takes a... Oh, and there's the head ringer. And if he's got an energy and a way to get the Shaman out of the active, he's got the KO here. Because Manectric for 2 energy would now be doing 140 damage, which would put the Mewtwo on 180, and he's only got 170. So Corey, that was a real control turn from Corey right there. Oh, and it looks like both the AZs are there. Oh, and that's a problem. Now he's going to be able to retreat the Shaman here, but now he's only doing 40 damage to the active Mewtwo. Now we do see a Crobat coming down that can do 40. And actually, now if he's got a Muscle Band... Oh, and he obviously doesn't have the Muscle Band. With a Muscle Band there, he could have actually put the 30 damage on the Mewtwo to put him up to 70, and then use Skill Dive to do 100 and get the KO. Luke there just passes, he's got nothing. Now, he's got that Ace Trainer in hand, and when he gets behind on prizes, he can play that. He will shuffle his hand into his deck and draw 6 cards, and Corey will shuffle his hand into his deck and draw 3. But Corey's got a much better setup here. Oh, now this is interesting. Oh, and Luke top decks a VS Seeker. It was interesting how he chose not to take the KO with Manectric there. Oh, this is a problem. Had he taken the KO there, he'd be 2 prizes up. As it is, Luke can now, maybe he plays an... he gets a Sycamore here. Maybe he plays an AZ later on to get that Mewtwo out of the active, or... You know, the Mewtwo's on 160, so a Golbat next turn gets the KO. I don't know how Luke's going to get him out of the active. There's no Float Stone because there's a Head Ringer. There's no AZ because he's already played a supporter. I don't believe he's going to be able to... I don't believe he's going to be playing Super... I don't think he plays Super Scoop Up in this deck. And I'm fairly sure he attached an energy to that Mega Mewtwo. So we do see a Trainer's Mail there getting a town map. So actually, that might have been a really good play from Corey. But actually, it might have been a really good play from Corey, because what essentially happens now, had Corey taken the KO, and not taking the KO was risky, ladies and gentlemen, because if Luke uses something like an AZ to pick up that Mewtwo, all that damage is gone. So it was a risky play to be sure. Oh, and it's paid off. If Corey's got a Golbat here... He's going to KO that Mewtwo and then get the first hit on whatever Luke brings active, which is either going to be a Mega Mewtwo with no energy, a Mega Mewtwo with 160 HP, which is very killable, Golbat and Manectric, or a Shaman, which will be killed by the Manectric. Does he not have a Golbat? Oh, this is heartbreaking. Oh, that's so rough. That was almost an amazing play by Corey there. Had he taken the KO with the Manectric on the previous turn, then what he could have done, then Luke brings up the Mewtwo and gets the Psychic Infinity KO on the Manectric, and then they're even. By not taking the KO, by putting the Mewtwo up to 160, Corey had an opportunity to drop a Golbat, KO the Mewtwo, and then Luke can only bring up one of 3 Pokemon. A Mega Mewtwo that's in KO range from a second Golbat, a Shaman, which will be 1-hit KO'd for 2 prizes by the Manectric, or a Mega Mewtwo that has no energy on, so you've got to try and use resources like Double Colorless Energy and Mega Turbo just to get him in a position to do the attack. None of which would be an ideal situation, given that Corey would then get a free hit on whatever came up into the active. All a moot point. And this is what both these games now, and I think from here, Luke's probably in a good position to win. And both these games have come down to the exact same thing. Corey needed a bat to drop some damage at just the right time, and he didn't have it. Now, in both situations, Luke could actually have guaranteed he wouldn't have it by dropping a Hex Maniac. Didn't happen either time. Both situations, Corey just needed to grab that bat, and it didn't happen. And that's... I mean, to be honest, it's the way it goes, ladies and gentlemen, in this matchup. Because of the constant threat of damage change, you are always sitting there thinking, I need to do a bit of damage, but not too much damage. You know, I want to use Crobat to hit for 100, but I can't hit for 130 because then he damage change KOs. I mean, you saw in the previous game, Corey did a whole bunch of damage to Luke, to the Mega Mewtwo, and then Luke just uses damage change to KO the Golbat, taking a KO and a prize, as well as completely healing the Mewtwo in the process and making it incredibly difficult for Corey to get a KO on the subsequent turn, which is, it's almost unfair. So we see a trainer's mail from Luke here. What's he going to be able to get? There was a VS Seeker there, and we know he's got a whole mess of supporters in his discard. Everything from Zerosic to Ace Trainer. I think there's a Lysander in there. Yep, there we go. Hex Maniac. We know there's a Sycamore in there. And this is why, and we see this in a lot of my videos, because it's a very common play nowadays. You battle compress, there are a whole bunch of supporters in your discard, or discard them using Sycamore or Ultra Ball, so that later on in the game, you have a big choice of which supporter you want to go and use. You draw into that VS Seeker, and then you get to just go and draw whatever you want. And it looks like it's an Ace Trainer from Luke here. So both players shuffle their hand into their deck. You can only play the card if you're behind on prizes. The player that played the card and is behind draws 6, and the player that didn't play it and is ahead on prizes draws 3. It's a bit like a comeback card, but it's less powerful than something like N. Well, actually, in this situation, it's slightly more powerful because N would have actually net Corey 4 cards rather than 3. But whereas N, you can let your opponent get down to 1 prize, play an N to 1, and watch them draw nothing. Here, they're always going to have 3 cards, so it's a decent little recovery card, is Ace Trainer. It's more powerful than N early game, less powerful than N late game. The big problem, of course, with Ace Trainer is, as we saw from Luke after Corey judged him, I'd like to think just playing the card, I'd like to think Corey isn't judging him. They're brothers, they get on. Or at least if he is judging them, it's in a moderately positive light. Luke had the Ace Trainer after the judge, but he couldn't play it because both players were on 6 prizes. Oh, here's a weird thing about this game right now. Oh, see, a Zubat there would have been huge. A Golbat, sorry. We saw that Corey had a Lysander in hand. Had Corey had a Golbat, he would have been able to Lysander that benched Mega Mewtwo. He then would have been able to go Golbat, KO with Manectric. And then the next turn he would have had to Sycamore. But of course, it's all well and good saying if, he didn't have the Golbat. So it's all a moot point, and there comes a level ball, and presumably the Golbat will be coming out now. But it's all a little bit too late. Now, he's played the level ball here. I mean, it's got to be a Golbat. All his Zubats have been played at this stage, and Golbat's the only other thing in his deck he can grab with a level ball. So he's going to go ahead, and he's going to go and grab a Golbat using that level ball. But he's not getting the KO because he hasn't played the Lysander. And, of course, he really wanted to use it on a previous turn. I mean, using bats to get mid-turn KOs is absolutely huge. What you can do is, you know, like we saw when there was that turn, the Mewtwo had 160 damage. It had 20 HP remaining. So you drop a Golbat, do 20 damage. You get to take 2 prizes. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that Corey has played a town map and he would have had his pick of prizes to take. And then he could have gone ahead and, had a first hit on whatever Luke then were to bring into the active. But as I've said, it's all a moot point, ladies and gentlemen. It's all a moot point because he didn't have the Golbat. So he's chosen to put it on the benched Mewtwo. Not a bad plan at all, because that Mewtwo now has 140 HP remaining, which of course is the amount of damage done by a Manectric with 2 energy and a muscle band, assuming that the defending Pokemon has a tool attached. Oh, and this is a really good play from Luke here. And this is why this Mewtwo deck is so frustrating. Oh, and a Hex Maniac as well to turn those bats off. Luke attaches a DCE to the active Mega Mewtwo. pays the retreat cost, and then uses damage change to KO the Zubat. I mean, Luke needed a Crobat there to leave active, really. And what happens now is that Corey had an opening there. Now, he still has an opening, to be honest. Actually, he might have the same opening as before. He needs Lysander. He now has 2 Manectrics, both of which will one-hit KO a Shaman. We know he's got a Lysander in the discard. So what Corey needs to do here is find a VS Seeker or a Lysander, bring the Shaman into the active and kill it with Manectric. And then it doesn't... Oh, and there's a Sycamore. And that could be the play that loses him the game. He needs to leave the Crobat active this turn. Corey's way to winning is essentially, next turn, Lysander to KO a Shaman. Pick up Lysander from prizes. And it's a turn late. So, if Luke has a Lysander here, he kills one of Corey's Manectrics and wins the game. Because Corey needs 2 Manectrics to KO those 2 Shaman. If Luke doesn't have a Lysander, then next turn, Corey Lysanders a Shaman, kills it, grabs another Lysander out the prizes, following turn grabs a Shaman using Lysander and kills it. He's got 2 Manectrics set up. The thing is, by not being able to take the prize this turn, Luke has the impetus. And Corey's not getting a KO on a Shaman otherwise than with a Manectric. So Corey needs to to force Luke to kill a Golbat. If Luke KOs a Manectric next turn, and Mewtwo's got enough energy attached to KO a Manectric, it's currently hitting for 190. That's an interesting play. Put in the Zubat active, basically saying, come on then, kill that. I don't really care. Fair enough, to be honest. Oh, and Luke doesn't appear to have a Lysander. Now, I'm assuming Corey's got one in the discard at this pile. I'm not. No, I'm fairly sure he has played one this game because I mentioned how he could have used it to get the KO if he had a Golbat. So yes, I'm fairly sure he does. Now, the other thing Luke needs to consider here is Sky returning with a Shaman, which is not a play you really want, but that's how he's going to be able to avoid Corey doing that. Because Luke can Psychic Infinity KO the Manectrics all day long. That's not going to be a problem. But as it stands at the moment, Luke has 2 Shaman on his field and 2 Mega Manectric. Now, Corey can easily Lysander the 2 Shaman and get the KOs with Manectric. And that will win him the game. And he'll win the prize race. Because if Luke takes 1 prize this turn, Corey takes 2. Luke takes 2, Corey takes 2 and wins. So I imagine what's going to happen here is, and there Luke there just double checking it's in his discard. Luke knows what's going on here, but Luke knows that Corey's got a VS Seeker, and he knows that Corey's going to take. I'm pretty sure that's a Lysander in the bottom left. Yeah, that definitely is, and he knows he's going to take that, and he's doing it a turn early, and this is what I said was going to happen. What Luke's doing, and it's a very good play from Luke here, and it's exactly what I would have done in this situation. Heck, it's exactly what I said he should do. Use the Shaman to do Sky Return for 30 damage. Incidentally, it's also left Corey in an awkward position here, because now Corey's got a Zubat in the active. Oh, he's going to grab a Golbat here to evolve and have the free retreat. But now, where does Corey go from here? Because now he's in an awkward position. He ain't getting a KO on a Mewtwo. The Mega Mewtwo, not yet at least. So, I mean, what he could do here is Lysander a Shaman, get the KO with a Manectric. But then Luke can get a KO on that Manectric, and then just needs 1 Lysander for game. The other thing he could do is, if he's got an energy, attack with Crobat for 100, and then allow Luke to, have to have 2 Lysanders to win the game. But the more Corey focuses on trying to kill the Mewtwo's, the more time Luke has to try and Sky Return with the Shaman. Although we should mention that there is a head ringer on that other Shaman, so it will take 3 energy to do Sky Return. So maybe that's Corey's route to winning. Although, of course, we know that Luke plays AZ and could use that to pick up a Shaman. That might be what Corey's checking for here. So as of a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of variables here. Can Corey KO a Mewtwo? Can Luke get that Shaman off the bench? Can Luke find 2 Lysanders to kill the Manectric? If he's got an energy here, I would suggest that the optimal play is to... And he's going for the Shaman KO now, which is not the end of the world because now he can take 2 prizes by doing so. I would suggest here that the optimal play is hitting for 100 with the Crobat. And, yeah, hitting for 100 with a Crobat. And then trying to KO a Mewtwo, trying to get the KO on the Mewtwo next turn and then kill the Shaman. That Shaman probably wasn't going anywhere because of the head ringer, but you never know when Luke's going to drop an AZ. Now we're currently seeing 160. There's a Mega Mewtwo. Now we're on 190. There's the KO. And I mean, you should expect the KO. Mewtwo, with the Mega Turbos and the DCEs, it really is. He does get the KO quickly. Now, we saw Corey take a Crobat and an AZ, which is an interesting play. What he's going to be able to do is drop a Crobat to do 30 damage, putting the Mewtwo on... Oh, and yeah, so there, yeah. So we saw a Shaman coming down there straight away, followed by an AZ. Oh, no. No, ignore all of that, sorry. The Shaman was already in his hand. So Luke gets a KO, he's down to 2 prizes, going to need a Lysander for the win. Now, Corey can do 30 to the Mewtwo here. And then he can do 140 with Manectric. But no, there's no way he's getting the KO this turn. So Luke is 1 Lysander away from winning regardless. Corey cannot put that Manectric into the active. So here, and he really needs an energy to attack with the Crobat. Here he can do 30 to the bench Mega Mewtwo. And then he can AZ and put the Zubat down again. So that next turn he can Golbat for 20, putting it in range of the Manectric. So essentially, Corey needs to play the Crobat, play the AZ, hope that Luke doesn't have a Lysander, and then have a Lysander himself the following turn. It's a lot to ask for. And like I keep saying, this is what the game comes down to. He can put 30 on that bench Mega Mewtwo. Oh, or on the active. Oh, and he's got the energy. And there comes Parallel City. And there comes VS Seeker. I'm assuming for a Judge. That's interesting, because Luke didn't have a Lysander in hand, if I remember correctly. I'm not a fan of putting the 30 on the active Mewtwo here. Because now he can't attack with a muscle-banded Crobat, because that will put Mewtwo on 130 and he can damage change out of it. And I know Parallel City's down, but Luke could easily draw into a Shrine of Memories here and change it over anyway. Or, so if you put the 30 on the bench Mewtwo, oh, it's all irrelevant. He's got the VS Seeker, he's got the game. That Judge has lost Corey the game. Now, see, I don't understand this, because now you're hitting the Mewtwo for 100, and now he can just damage change it off and kill the Crobat. What I would have done, you do 30 to the bench Mewtwo, putting him on 50 total, and then you do 100 to the active Mewtwo, and then both of them are in range, and you AZ. Because we know he had the AZ in hand. And there we go, there's the KO. We knew this was going to happen. That way, you've got a Mega Mewtwo on the bench with 160 HP, 1 Golbat, and by playing the AZ, you know there's a Zubat on the bench, and you know that there is a Golbat in hand. And you've also got 100 on the active Mewtwo, which is also in Manectric range. So, now Corey had no way of knowing that Luke would actually have a better hand post-judge. But what he could have done, and I'm not saying he was wrong, because you've got to play the odds here, but had he done 30 to the bench Mewtwo and then 100 to the active Mewtwo, he's in a position where either can be KO'd by Manectric, and we know he had an AZ in hand to pick up the Crobat, and we know he had a VS Seeker because he used it for the judge, so he could have used that to grab a Lysander for the KO. So I see what he was doing with the judge play. It didn't work out, but again, I could see both of their hands, and he couldn't. Thank you very much to Corey and to Luke for agreeing to be on stream, and congratulations to Luke, of course, and to Corey. This is top 8, so they both did pretty darn well. Weirdly, not even the second time they've played in top 8 this season. Thank you very much to all at Athena Games for allowing us to record and making us very, very welcome indeed. Still, one of my favourite places to play in the UK. And thank you to all you lovely people for watching this. I'll be back with more games soon, including a top 4 from this particular tournament. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves till next time. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.